Welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. When you're crafting an entire piece of life that you're setting your goals on, it includes so many aspects. And that's why this is just the place that we share all. We put all the ideas out there, all the things that you might want a little help with as you're crafting this life that is your dream, your thing. This is the one chance you get to be you in this life. And so today we're going to talk about what if you could convey an idea and have someone actually listen and believe you in 30 seconds, rather than going, I don't really like her makeup. I don't know if I like her hair. And you're thinking about all those things. Or you're questioning, does she really know what she's talking about? I don't know if I'm going to give her validity. What if you could move past all things? So to that end, I have Davina Stanley with me today, who's going to help us explore all those kinds of communication skills. Davina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Mary. Lovely to be here.
And you'll detect that little bit of Australian accent, of course, even though she lives in Seattle. Tell me a little bit about your journey from, being in Australia and being obviously born and raised there to Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, well, there's been lots in between. So I grew up on a farm in country Australia, and I think that gave me a wonderful perspective on life, actually. And I have moved a lot, and my husband and I are quite determined we're not getting any more driver's licenses. We're here. We've moved a lot. And so part of that was for me, initially, before I met him, I moved out of home when I was 16. I moved into the town so I could finish my schooling. And then I went to a city called Adelaide for university.
Oh, yes.
And so that was that. And then I got my first job as a teacher of very young children, actually, in Melbourne. And I'd always wanted to live in Melbourne, completely ignorant of the challenge of moving to a new city by myself at 20, with 25 4-year-olds to look after in class, and knowing one person in Melbourne. So that was a very, very big challenge that I took on. And then quite soon after that, met and married my husband, and he had the travel bug, right? I thought I was living in my forever city. I loved Melbourne. And then he said, but, before we get married, you just said you want to go backpacking. I don't ever want to go backpacking, but I do want to live in Hong Kong. So why don't you do some backpacking and go via Hong Kong, make sure you like it, because I want to live there one day. I was like, okay, well, I've never left
What was
Australia.
the draw for him to Hong Kong?
He wanted to work in banking.
Okay.
And there was
That's a great place. Yep.
Yeah, there was a financial glitch, which meant that he'd delayed going. And we met around the time I think he'd just delayed because his job had fallen through. And so anyway, 3 months before the wedding, I took off for 6 weeks. My father refused to pay the down payment on the reception because he said, you might not come back. So you bet I'm not putting good money down for that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I did come back, but I went and backpacked around the UK and so on, and came back via Hong Kong, and we had family friends there. So I stayed with them, and, I thought, oh, this looks like fun. So we came back, we got married, and a couple of years later we moved. So
To Hong Kong.
Yeah, to Hong Kong. Yeah. And, such an adventure back then. We're talking 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it was still is vibrant and bustling, but it's a very different vibe now. And so it was, just such an adventure to be young couple living in that sort of city. We were traveling such a lot for work, and, all fantastic stuff. And I landed on a job at McKinsey. I'd gone back to uni in between. And I'd not quite finished, but I was on my way to finish a communication degree. And so, I loved working with McKinsey. I got pregnant, so we had our first son in Hong Kong. And then the Asian financial crisis came, and my husband got transferred. So we moved to New York. 6 months
Okay.
pregnant with a 1-year-old, and a full-time job offer from McKinsey because of visa. It had to be full-time. And my husband was traveling 5, 6 days a week. So I just didn't think I could work for McKinsey with 2 tiny little children under the age of 2 and, do the sort of demanding work full-time that I had.
So explain to my listeners who is McKinsey, because some of them may not be familiar with
Yeah.
that.
So McKinsey is a management consulting firm, and they're part of what's called MBB, McKinsey Boston Consulting Group and Bain. I don't know why I'm
World
hesitating there.
renowned.
Yeah.
Let's just be clear about that. Yeah.
Pardon me?
World renowned. Let's just be clear about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was very fortunate to land a role there. And so it was pretty demanding work, but, really exciting, really fun. And so, anyway, we lived in New York for a couple of years. We had our second son there. And then we were transferred to Tokyo. Then I had a period in Melbourne, short stint in Melbourne with the boys where Andrew was everywhere. Then back to Hong Kong. We were there for a year and a half, and then we went back to Australia. So my sons went to kindergarten in 3 and 4 countries apiece.
Wow.
And they went to 2 primary schools in Melbourne and 2 different high schools because of my husband's health. We had to move cities when they were in high school. So they've had a bit of an adventure. It's been interesting navigating a career through the middle of all of that too.
When I look at all those changes and the situations that you had to step into, you didn't just get to lean in and kind of look around a little bit. I mean, you were like pushed into a lot of different things.
Yeah.
First of all, the amount of courage that takes, internal strength, to really live in that space where this is new to me, but it's not devastating to me.
Yes. Once you've done it once, it's a lot easier. When we agreed to move from Hong Kong to New York, for example, I loved my time in Hong Kong, but it was very transient. It's a very expat city, and you meet wonderful people. You make very deep, very fast friendships. And then moved to, and, we had this opportunity, and I did go and check New York out. And, I spent 3 weeks there with my husband. He was working and so on before we decided we would move. But I didn't have any great fear about it because I thought, well, how hard can it be compared to moving to a city in Asia? It's a Western city.
To Hong Kong. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then later when we were moved to Tokyo and under very different circumstances, I just thought, I didn't go and check the city out. I didn't, I knew why we were doing it. And so it's like, oh, well, okay, I can work there. That's cool. I bought, renovated and sold a house in New York because I wanted a project. I didn't want to just be at home. And so, it's just like, okay, done it before, can do it again.
I think that's probably, it may be the most profound thing that you say today. I just think that realizing that once you've done it, every time after that is easier.
But
it's the first one that's big. And when you can step into that, everyone after that, you're building more and more resilience of being, solid, empowered. That is so profound. If we can just have the courage to step in the first time, it just gets easier from there.
It does. It does. But even more than that, I think, Mary, if other people can do it, so can you.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not that it's easy. It's not, and, you're not blindsided by the challenges because they're more familiar. But
Yes.
if you've made courageous decisions of any kind before, or, even just one step forward into something new that's, feels courageous for you, then I think, okay, I made one step. I can take another step. I can take another step. Well,
Yes.
I didn't die. That didn't kill me. So, all right, I'm still breathing. What's next?
Yeah. I just admire that in you. That's just from a kindergartner, a kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
to where you grew and what you do now, the journey through motherhood and career, and that you are still married to the same person, to me has to be, put you up there in the top elite, that you were able to do all of those things and still stay married. It's
But
incredible.
well, sometimes, yes, that is incredible. We've been married for coming up 33 years and we're very happy. But,
Wow.
you know, sometimes you do wonder how that happened, how that managed to survive through all of that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
you do.
I get
You
that.
do. But look, life's just interesting, isn't it? And I think we just have to be um, willing to look into the hard things and say, look, let's just get some perspective about this. I live in a Western country, or I've lived in Eastern countries too, but, very well serviced countries. I've got every bit of technology available to me, even if I'm a very, very modest means. I can use WhatsApp and call anyone around the world for no money. I can find a McDonald's or a Starbucks with free Wi-Fi. It's if you think of what's difficult about
Yeah.
making big changes or moving, it's about relationships. Moving. People say to me, "So what do you miss about Australia?" It's like, well, I miss the people, and it's not the people as a culture. I can find Australians here, and I can pick up the phone and I can speak for as long as I want or as my friends are available. And
Right.
some of my Australian friends live in other countries too. So, the country, sure, but actually it's the relationships that become the really important thing. And so, if you're changing jobs and changing companies, you're changing your relationships. You leave your work colleagues, your everybody and everything that you're familiar with. So it doesn't have to be that kind of change. That can be something to really navigate. Yeah.
It is the relationships, when all is said and done, that truly are the legacy that we leave. They are the legacy that we live while we're here. They're really what it's all about. Without that piece, what is this for, if not for the relationships?
Mm. And,
Yeah.
the studies are showing that these days, aren't they? There's lots of emphasis on health and fitness and so on, which are very important things. But when you look into why did some people thrive, it was the relationships even more than the health stuff. Why did people live longer? Well, that's a question, but why were the last years of their lives richer? And it's the relationships. It's much harder to maintain them when you're moving a lot, which is why I'm not keen to move again. I'm really keen to stay put where we are. And my kids are here in the States now. So that's, a big part of why we moved this time.
Okay, well, I have to point out another zinger, number 2, that now usurps the first zinger, number 1, that you said, which is that in the midst of all of these things that we now do for our health and wellness, and it's taken over really the first world country with a priority for everyone. In the midst of all of that, some still thrive and some still don't. And what makes the difference to our longevity is our relationships.
Mm.
That sounded really profound, didn't it? And you said it.
I don't think I'm the first to say it, though.
No, but it's
No.
just sometimes to say it from the perspective of a woman who has done all the things that you have and could be touting so many things, that your relationships, the fact that you're married still to your husband, the fact that your children now live in the United States, that you can pick up the phone and talk to people in Australia, not random Australians, but those who you have relationships with, I think really brings to the forefront of the priority that's been in your life. Some
Oh,
people
it's
do not
essential.
realize that can be a priority and that would serve them the best. Of all the things that they might center on, their relationships and developing those are what serves them the very best.
And look,
You
I
know,
think, in this post-COVID time too, I read a statistic, and I'm not going to remember the specifics of it, but a shocking number of was first of I have sons, so I think of men too. A shocking number of men in the United States, and I think it's true across the West. I don't think it's just the United
right.
States. Have do not have a best friend. If something was really in difficulty in their life, they don't have someone they could pick up the phone and speak to. And I want to say it was like 70%. It was a shocking number, a shocking number. And I have to assume that there's a shocking number of women who feel in that place too. And, I just think that that makes life very, very difficult. But it can be very difficult to step out and find, genuine
Yeah.
friendship. And, we all got very comfortable, I think, in our homes. And those of us who are introverts, my family, we were like, oh, we've got our kids in the same place. We can actually have dinner together. Oh my goodness, neither of us are traveling.
Yeah.
This is a real treasure, to have that time. And I understand it was not the case, that it was like that for everybody. I fully understand that. But then you move away, and my son moved to New York on his own at 22 into the Omicron crisis, which was a really big thing to do.
Yeah.
And, it takes time to make friends in a new city. And I think, if you look around you, you can, be very generous to other people, because you shouldn't just assume that other people around you have it all together and have their friends all sorted and so on. There's a lot of loneliness out there, And I think COVID made that a lot worse.
Yeah. I think that you are absolutely right. In my experience, most of my women friends who I just love to spend time with, we have a network, a circle of women that support us and love us. You could call any one of them and they would come without a doubt. But I think of the 4 men that are in my life, closest to me, my husband, my 2 sons were like that way. And my son-in-law, because I have 1 daughter, those 4 men do not have that outside connection other than to their spouse, their children, and then at work. But I don't think any of them have someone that they would just pick up the phone and call and say, hey, let's go hang together. Let's go, like my husband, let's go play a round of golf. Now, he golfs twice a week with his regular golfing buddies. But that's different than having,
Isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, it's structured, it's safe. Yeah. Oh, that sounds like another podcast for another place. And I have had on a number of men that have talked about, developing network groups for men, and some of them have been successful and some of them haven't. And it's a cultural barrier thing that I believe, that there is that thing about it's okay for women to get together and do that. But men, when they get together, it's still that good old boys club thing where the conversation is not about, so tell me some of the things you're struggling with.
Yeah, that's right. They don't speak like that very often. Not very many that I know speak like that. But I think that they have a companionship when they do things alongside each other. Right?
Yes.
Which is why sport matters a lot. And they relate differently. And look, back in Australia, we have a circle of friends from our youth. And, there's one of those guys that I'm thinking of in particular, but there was a group of them who would drop anything for anyone. And one of them is actually coming to stay with us in 3 or 4 weeks' time.
Exciting.
His daughter has been on a scholarship here in Washington State, so he's coming and staying with us before he goes and collects her. But it is, there were a few people that you knew Simon would always, and he would offer too. So I think there's a sense of practicality around the help that some men offer, rather than necessarily, we'll talk about our emotions and our feelings and, oh my goodness, this is difficult. Or, at our fine age, there's some lady things that happen that we might talk about, and just things that
Yeah.
happen to us that are part of life that are unique to being women. So I think the male friends we have that would drop everything and come tends to be practical help first, rather than perhaps the more personal sort of help that we women help each other in
Yeah.
practical ways too, but we have that extra personal side to our
I
friendship.
think that is, you've hit that nail on the head. I've heard John a dozen times say to our neighbor, um, well, if you ever need help moving anything or,
Yeah,
fixing
yeah,
anything, just call me. I'll be happy to help
yeah,
and come over. And but
yeah.
rather than saying, hey, I have some time this afternoon. You want to get together and just sit on our front porch, and
They don't do that.
they don't do that.
They don't do that. No, 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 no. And if they're networking or getting to know other
Mhm.
people, they're talking about business or the
Yeah.
things they like to do.
Yeah.
So it's I think men can form very deep bonds that way and very lasting. And my husband, he's very introverted. He likes a lot of time by himself, but he builds and maintains very, very long and deep
Mm.
friendships. And so he's got a friend who he used to work with, got to think 25 years ago probably, and they're on the WhatsApp, you know, every day talking about Trump or not Trump or whatever on different, on very different sides of the coin, and they're battling all these issues out, and there's all sorts of ways that he connects with people, but they tend to be about the issues, the
Yeah.
things, different things. Yeah.
Well, we will come back for this for another podcast, but I would love to talk about what I thought I wanted to talk to you about, but this other part has been so interesting. I've just like glummed onto it. But let's talk about this. Well, you have a book, and let's
Yeah.
talk about the technique that you teach,
Mhm.
and tell us all about that.
Sure. So when I was at McKinsey, I was very fortunate to learn from a woman called Barbara Minto, and I learnt via video, but I did meet her later and was approved to teach the method that
Ah.
she developed it at McKinsey with a team, but she's become the iconic person around this method. It's called the pyramid principle, and
The
so.
pyramid principle, is that right? Okay.
Yeah. The idea is that the ideas are stacked into a hierarchy with one main idea at the top. The generic term is structured thinking. And so I learned that method, and my job was to help the consultants use it to clarify and convey complex ideas. And so I came to that with a background having learnt to write from one of Australia's best children's authors when I was at Teachers College. Her name's Mem Fox. If you ever need beautiful children's books or gifts, have a look at hers. There's one called Possum Magic that's absolutely beautiful. And
Oh,
look,
I love that.
she's wonderful. She grew up in Africa as a missionary's child, and one day she'd have green hair, another day she'd have purple. A real creative. And so she taught me really creative ways to write and
Sure.
think of rhythm and so on, being very, very important.
Can we say her name again?
Mem Fox, M-E-M, short for Miriam. Yeah.
M-E-M Fox. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a
Go and
look.
have a look. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're beautiful and beautifully illustrated too. So I learned from her, learned her creative techniques. Then I learned journalistic writing when I went back and studied communication. I went to night school and studied again. And so public relations and journalistic sorts of writing, which are also sort of a pyramid, but they talk about being the upside down, the big thing at the top and then come down. And it's a different way of writing to what I learnt at McKinsey, where you have one big idea, a short introduction, one big idea, and then you unpack that big idea. And, when confronted with a really messy finance deck, bearing in mind, background, farm kid, kindergarten teacher, communication. I worked in corporate for about 5 years before I joined McKinsey. So, here am I, my first project at McKinsey, feeling like, I'm on probation, so I've got to prove that I deserve the job. I'm given a 50-page finance deck, and look,
Yeah.
I don't remember the topic, but I think it might have been something to do with restructuring the Singapore Stock Exchange, something like that.
Oh, just a small thing. You like that?
Just
Okay,
a
great.
small thing. So, I was ill-equipped, to untangle that. And so, I was given it, and it's like, okay, here's your thing. You know, the videos you watched, you learned the thing, now do the thing. Okay, do the thing. So the
Okay.
only way that I could really come to terms with the information that I had in front of me was to structure it, was to say, right, what's the message on this page? What do the words say? But what do the numbers say? And what does it actually mean? Right? And like lay it all out and organize it all into a hierarchy. So I had to deconstruct it, right? And then put it back together. None of the techniques that, you know, people talk about storytelling and narrative and using techniques like novelists use to write at work. And honestly, they would not have helped me at all. The journalistic writing, it, you know, sure, I knew how to write a good sentence, but that didn't help me either. So this technique of really teasing out what something says and mapping it into a hierarchy is very, very powerful. So it's intellectually very rigorous, but allows you to use logic together with synthesis and then just humanity, you know, to tell a story. So at McKinsey, it tended to be used to say, okay, we've done some analysis. What did we find? Here's the answer. Here's the answer that we found. And so what I've done is I've said, okay, that's great. That's very useful. But what about if you're in a business setting and you have to take the answer that McKinsey found, or Boston Consulting, or Bain, or whoever it is. You maybe you did the analysis. It doesn't matter. Or you've just got knowledge, frankly, because you've worked in a space,
Right.
and you need to put an idea forward to your senior decision makers. How do I use the same techniques to structure a message to be really persuasive inside that business setting where you've got a whole lot of stakeholder dynamics around you? How do you actually do that? And so, you know, sometimes you've got to speak off the cuff on a topic. Sometimes you've got time to prepare and you've got a presentation to deliver. How do we take those principles and put them in that different context? So that's what I've specialized in doing. And so I've built a framework for doing it where it's got 5 steps. First of all, you flush out the strategy, communication strategy. Who am I communicating to and why? And you go quite deep on that, not superficially, right? And then once you do that, you can say, okay, well, because I've used this method for so long, I think there are 10 basic patterns, ways you can tell a story, archetypes, if you like.
Right.
So, you know, I lay them out in my books, and I've got online courses too. So I lay them out. So pick one, and I give you a way of deciding if I've got this strategy, which one is most likely to be most useful. And then, okay, so you've got like a skeleton then, fill it in. You've got all your information, fill it in. Test it. Map it on a single page. Don't write your presentation. Don't write your, you know, your big, long, wordy board paper. Don't do any of that. Get it on a single page, and I show you how to do that. And test it as a one-pager so you can actually be really collaborative with your stakeholders, with your manager, and they can review your messaging really quickly. Because if you send them the big document, they're going to look at it and say, great, Davina spent a lot of time on this. I want to really do that justice. But I'm back to back with meetings. So I'll just leave it for now. We've got time. And, you know, what happens is the night before you have to submit it, at 9 o'clock at night, they open up their laptop and they start working on it. And they can't ask you what you were trying to say. They can't do anything but rewrite it for you, right? Or it's, you know, 4 a.m. if they're an early bird, or it's Sunday afternoon. It's something inhospitable. So they do that, and they're doing your job for you, and nobody likes that. They don't want to do your job for you. You don't want them to do your job for you, but it's all set up to fail a bit. So map it on a page. Once they can respond quickly, 15 minutes, they can come back, give you some thoughts. No, that's terrible. Redo it. You missed the point altogether. Or, yeah, maybe just make it stronger in these areas. Or add a few detail here. I think you missed a couple of things there. Do that. They can do that really quickly. Once that's clear, then you can put it in a document and then deliver it and so on. So that becomes very feasible. And I think too, when you've got to speak off the cuff, that all sounds like overwhelming amount of work. Oh my gosh, you can't do that for just, I've just got a meeting. I can't do all of that. So I think the thing is to anticipate the key things that you know you're going to be asked about. What's the status of your project? What do you need from your leaders to help accelerate it? You know, what could someone else do to help you? The sorts of core things that you would ordinarily be on top of when you're on top of the work that you're doing, and just map it out as a one pager and be very, very clear about it, so that when you do get called to speak off the cuff, it's not really off the cuff. You've thought about what your main message is. You know what the theme is for the week or the month. And, that becomes a lot easier then. So it does require thinking. It does require structure, but makes such a difference, such a difference.
Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples of this in my speaking, and you tell me if I have this right. Okay. If I've heard what you said. As I've watched different other speakers, obviously talk, whether that be at a conference or convention or a women's summit, whatever it may be, there seem to be those two kind of people and the way they speak. And there are those speakers that, give you this broad spectrum of things. And then, the last slide or two on their PowerPoint, they come up with this one thing down here.
Yes.
And all of that is to get you to this point.
Yes.
When you were talking, I actually could see that I do just the opposite.
Yes.
I start with my premise.
Yes.
And it's up front.
Yeah.
Whether that be like, I'm just thinking of one PowerPoint I have. You can be your own best champion.
Yes.
So I start with the statement.
Yes.
And then I develop that into how that happens and tell stories from, personal experiences and get them to buy into that they have to stand up for themselves. They have to speak their own value before anyone else believes it. So is that kind of what we're talking about, that you state it first and then you develop it?
Yeah, you do. And you've really structured about how you develop it underneath. Also lead into it a little bit.
Okay, tell me.
Sometimes you can just go, bang, here's the big idea, and then go. But more often people need a minute or two, and I mean just a minute or two. I don't mean lots of background. That becomes a real problem. But just a really short introduction to tune their ear in, but also to go, oh yeah, that's an interesting topic. Why are you telling me about that? Oh, that's why. Interesting. Now I want to know more.
Okay.
So having just a little introduction to introduce the topic in a way that's really relevant to your audience. Explain why you're communicating about that right now. And then you sort of tease them and draw them in, but fast, And then, here's how I think about that. Here you are. Here's the main thing. Now, let me unpack at a high level. Maybe you're giving a set of reasons why you think that's true. You're pitching them to invest more in a project or something. You say, look, here's why I think we ought to invest another $1 million in this project. I've got 4 reasons why, and I'm going to tell you what they are. I'm not just going to say there are 4 reasons and leave you hanging. I'm going to tell you what each of those reasons are, and I'm going to have thought very carefully about the order of them, maybe the most important one first, leading to the least. And I've got a way of thinking about that, the most valuable one to you, my decision maker, not necessarily to me, maybe to me, but probably to you or to the business or whatever the frame is. So being very, very careful to give away the high level first, not just the main message, but this very logically well-structured set of things that then you can say, right, now let's dig in together into the first one. And prosecute that. Right. Now we're in agreement about that. Okay, terrific. So let's come back and look at number 2. Number 2 is this. Let's go there. And so there's a couple of ways we structure the ideas underneath. But they help by structuring them really well. It gives us really great confidence that we've thought about everything properly. So we can come with great confidence and great calmness, knowing that we've done our level best to, present a really solid argument. And we've had the chance, too, to test it quickly and easily with our colleagues. So we have more confidence, I think.
I love that. You said something in there that is always a zinger for me, and that is that we just bring our very best. And when you know that this is your very best, you do speak with confidence. And your very best is not something, okay, I just threw this together this morning. I'm speaking. Can I just say how much I tune out speakers that lead with that? Oh, I'm sorry. I've had such a crazy week. I haven't really thought much about this until today.
And
But
that's all
here's,
about me,
yeah,
not
I'm
about
gonna
you. Yeah.
tune those guys out just right to start with. Yeah, and that's not your very best. And I respect people and their time, the value of their bandwidth, that I want to bring my very best. And acknowledge that we all have value in our time. And if I'm going to take their time and ask for their time, then they deserve my very best.
And you know something about time that's really important there too. And I described that cycle, the review cycle that happens, that is very broken in a lot of places. And, you know, time is the thing that's the only currency we have that's finite. And we don't know how much of it we have.
Yeah.
So to waste it, you know, in the way that, you know, track changes, these tiny little edits that go round and round and round and round while you're sort of negotiating the messaging in these really big documents and working late at night and out of hours and in a way that everyone is, you know, some people feel, well, I have to, it's my job, I'm the leader and so on. But actually what you have to do is help your people, you to know what they need to say and, set them up for success without you working nights and weekends to do their job for them. And I think people just don't know how. So this technique that I use really cuts not just the length of communication normally, quite radically often, but the amount of time it takes to prepare it. So it's the right kind of hard. You're focused, you're thinking very hard about your messaging, but it comes together much more quickly. It just doesn't necessarily feel as fast because you're having to think. Thinking doesn't feel fast,
But just as in all areas of life, the more you do it and the more you step into it, the quicker it comes to you and you're able to think through all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So tell me, in what areas of anyone's life this technique would have value?
I think, there's obviously in the work setting where you need to clarify and convey complicated ideas to somebody else. So it's obvious in that setting. I think it doesn't hurt either where you've got sensitive topics that you want to really think about. And you may not, be as structured in having a conversation with somebody about something difficult in your personal life. You're not going to stand up with a PowerPoint presentation to negotiate something difficult personally. Of course, it's ludicrous.
I might like to, but I probably won't.
Let me tell you how this works.
Pay attention.
So, absolutely, you're not doing that. But to be very clear in, okay, I've thought about my position in this, and to have your notes so that you've got them in a tense environment, perhaps, or just difficult, and say, look, I really want to understand how you think about this. I thought about how I think about this, but, how are you thinking about this? Okay, all right, well, I saw that a little differently. Here's how I thought about it. It's just a planning tool, a way of thinking about your messaging. And I think you've got to hold it a little bit loosely, because other people bring such wonderful insight, whether it's at work or in your personal life, to your situation. But it helps you think to get you started for those conversations, so long as you can hold them loosely in your personal life and use them as a foundation for a good conversation. I can't imagine you would use it in terribly many personal settings that weren't a bit tense, maybe, or didn't need a lot of planning.
Right. I think about me personally, the places that this is going to have value to me. I work in 27 different nonprofits.
Oh my word.
Yeah. One of them in South Africa, okay,
Yeah.
and another one in Kenya. I'm going to Ukraine the end of this week, and then tons of local different types of nonprofits. So, and I think about the number of situations I am in where I'm going to present an idea to a board meeting or to a group of supporters, to donors.
Yeah. Yeah.
This technique would have a great value to me as I am trying to explain the position, which to me is different than getting them to buy in. Does that make sense?
Yes. So tell me a little bit more about the difference, because as you're saying that, I'm imagining you're persuading them to get involved or to donate or something like that. So you are,
Yeah.
they're really buying
So,
into what you're doing, aren't they?
however, I'm very clear, having done this now for a long time, that there's okay, can I just say that I'm very good at manipulating people? I have to say that up front. And because I know that I can manipulate these people into donating.
Yeah.
I'm good at it. I know when to pull at the heartstrings. I know when to do this. I know how that they can envision, themselves and why they want to support this. But that's different than getting them to buy into the concept of what the nonprofit is about.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
see-
So, all right. So I guess in my mind, I conflate the two a little bit, because if they're giving you money, let's say, right, that could be transactional, right? Or it
But
could
in a
be,
nonprofit, it's very rarely transactional.
right. But the gift of the money could be
Yeah,
transactional.
it's a transaction.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give you money. I'm not,
Yeah.
I like what you
Don't
said.
ask me to volunteer.
Yeah, single
Don't
check. Goodbye.
don't send me any more of your information. Just take the
Just
check
go
and
away.
go.
Just take
Yeah.
my money.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So there could be that. But as part of that, I think if you build a case that says this not-for-profit is doing such wonderful work that, you really ought to support us in some way or another, I suspect the messaging that you're using, you just know what message to drop when to what person, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of it. And the term manipulation, well, manipulation can be used for good or evil, can't it? And so when I think of it in, I prefer to think of persuasion rather than manipulation, because I think it has a more positive
I think it does,
to it.
but I'm aware when I'm doing one or the other.
Yeah.
I know me well enough.
Yeah. And I think we all have a little bit of the manipulator in us.
Yeah.
To get things done. You sort of
I try and hold her. I try to keep her down.
Yeah. It's a good thing we're doing. It's okay. So yeah, I think, you will have a case. It's just how are you delivering the case is my guess. Right? And so a lot of that ability feeds into the message that you're structuring. It's just knowing how to tone it, whether this person is going to respond to the facts, whether this person is going to respond to, the case studies or the bleeding heart sort of story, or this person is going to relate to something else. It's just going to be the tone of the language in the way you do it,
Right.
or whether you somehow reorder the ideas by, that what matters to them most in terms of the information is going to be different. I think it all comes down to the same sort of thing. You might decide not to scare the horses and say, right, if you think of the communication strategy piece that I talked about at the beginning, you're saying, okay, well, what is the strategy here? In this meeting, I know if I can get them to accept that this particular issue, this little micro issue, is critical and they should support they will support us on this. A little thing they need to do that I know if I can get them across the line with that, then I'll get them across the line with something else. You might break your communication apart instinctively, or because you've thought about it a lot in advance. When you've been doing something for a long time, like you have, it's not that you're just making stuff up. It's pattern recognition. You've seen this before, right? And I said I had, 10 patterns of stories that I like to use because I've done so many of these corporate stories. I listen for a little bit to what somebody needs to say or what they need to achieve. Say, okay, it's sketch it on a board. It's this one, or this one. Pick one. And very quickly, clients can get a decision. You're doing the same thing.
Right.
If this person, okay, you're going to go for broke and go for the big donation, or you're going to go for the $10 thing, or, maybe get them to give some time and get them to warm in and then go for something else. You just, what story are you telling in what moment is the question. You just know what outcome to get from each conversation is my guess.
I think I need your book. Do you have an online, do you have an online course about this?
I do. Yes, I do.
All right. So as soon as this podcast is over, I want you to send me an email that has all the links you want us to put at the end of the podcast. So like maybe your LinkedIn and then your website and how to buy the book. And, I'm assuming that your courses are listed on your website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I want all of that so the people who have listened to this today can absolutely find you whenever they need you and be like, oh, Mary's already a persuasive person. And she's going to be even more persuasive. I want to be persuasive too. And I think this has a lot of value for us in so many different situations. And can I just tell you the number of women that I've heard from who start off the conversation like this? I have so many good ideas. I know what the next statement is going to be. I know it.
Yes.
And it is, true. But no one listens to me.
Yes.
And then they start into a little bit of victim and poor me and blah, blah, blah. And to be able to offer them this kind of insight of, have you put in the work to be your best self and to really, and this is how, here's the how to, and you can present this. You don't have to hang around as a victim anymore. This shows you how to step into your light. I love that. Davina, this is brilliant. Thank you so much for all of your insight and all of your work and for sharing so much of your personal piece with me. That was really a delight to have that as well. I love that.
Such a pleasure, Mary. Lovely to speak to you.
All right, darling. And this will be airing, and we hope to see you back again as we discuss the other topic that we weren't going to talk about, which is helping men develop those kind of one-on-one relationships, because it is all about relationships. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that now I have one with you.
My pleasure. Me too.
All right. Thank you now.
Crafting a Meaningful Life.